Are you looking for a unique way to reach your audience? OpenFortune offers an innovative approach to advertise by placing your brand message inside fortune cookies, reaching 99% of U.S. zip codes through a network of over 47,000 restaurants. They work with the likes of Duolingo, Chime, ZipRecruiter, and many more. It's a memorable and effective way to connect with consumers at a moment when they're most receptive. So if you're interested, check out OpenFortune, and I got to give a big shout out to them for making today's episode possible. I'm genuinely so excited for this one. When I got the email that you were coming on, I was just so stoked. We're thrilled to be joined by Alicia, the dynamic CMO of Delta Airlines. With over 20 years of experience under her belt, Alicia isn't just leading Delta's global brand strategy, she's redefining it. She's the driving force behind Delta's marketing, creative services, and community engagement, all while ensuring that Delta continues to connect people and cultures around the globe. Before Delta, Alicia transformed the marketing landscape at SAP, making it one of the 20 most valuable brands in the world, adding over $18.5 billion in brand value under her leadership. Alicia's track record is nothing short of impressive, being a 4-time recipient of Forbes' most influential CMO in the world. Her passion for purpose-driven leadership and mentoring young talent shine through in every project she undertakes. So get ready for an insightful conversation. I'm so excited to have you here, Alicia. I have to ask, where did your love of marketing really fall in? When did you learn that this was a passion?
Really, it's a great question. First of all, thank you for having me on with you today. I'm really looking forward equally to this conversation together. So I started my career not in marketing. I was in finance and M&A strategy work, and I did that reporting directly to the CEO of my company for the first 7 years of my career. And it was interesting in all of that work that we did, whether we were acquiring companies or standing up joint venture partnerships in different parts of the world, thinking about innovation and how we were going to invest to drive the growth of the company. I learned through all of that the power of your story really matters. It matters when you're trying to figure out who's going to help you extend the reach of your value proposition in a far-off country that you're not able to have single ownership around, or when you think about the innovation of your value to customers. So much is about how well you know your customers, how well you build a story of relevance for them, how well you sell that, how well you innovate. And when I sort of took a step back and said, gosh, I'm just so inspired by it. And then I realized all of that is marketing. And so from there...
What was that aha moment for you? If you remember.
I think the first company that I worked with is a company called Rosenbluth International. It was a company that was later acquired. A company based in Philadelphia was later acquired by American Express. And I was part of the deal team for the acquisition. And when I was in that room, I realized the importance of really kind of selling our value to American Express. And every question was, tell me about what your customers' needs are. What types of products did you build as a result of it? Where do you think your message is differentiated? And just as I was preparing for every single one of those deal discussions, I had to keep leaning on the marketing organization to help support all the answers to every question.
Totally.
And so it was during that moment where I really, and I'd known it with everything that I had done so far up till that point, but you really do recognize how much knowing your customer matters, how much making sure that you're building a story of relevance matters as well. So I will say that it was kind of in between both of those roles that I thought, wow, this is a really powerful team within a company. And if you manage storytelling well and you absolutely understand your customer and your needs, you've got a lot of possibilities as a brand. So it was sort of during that period.
Yeah, there's something so special about getting to know your consumer, and you end up, we're going to try and summarize a lot of your career in 30 minutes. So you end up working at American Express, right, for 11 years, and then you take that CMO position at SAP. What was expectation versus reality of your first CMO role?
Wow, that is such a great question. So in both cases, Amex, 150-year-old brand, and SAP, when I was there, was about to celebrate its 50th anniversary. And so legacy brands, one obviously financial services, credit card business, the other just deep in B2B technology and software. One of the things that I had realized in both roles, and quite similar early on, is when I was brought in to really help transform the story of the brand. And everybody wanted a new story. They wanted to make sure that it was relevant with what was happening in the marketplace, but equally wanted to preserve the history of the company in the storytelling. And so you had to strike this really interesting balance between what's old is good and what's new is in a lot of ways somewhat better. And sort of how do you kind of preserve what's great about the company? And it starts with, you got to spend a lot of time understanding it. And that's what I did. A lot of people, they go into a role and they're immediately looking forward. Well, when I took on both of those roles, I spent time kind of looking backwards to the period when we were founded. And I really sort of looked back to the founders of the companies and worked to understand, okay, well, what were the founders, what were they doing? Were they creating a new opportunity with this company? Were they trying to solve an issue that hadn't yet been solved by a company before? What is it? Because to me, once you understand the sort of mindset of why the company was founded, you recognize pretty early and clearly what makes that company special. And that was the piece of it that I worked hard to understand and then preserve, but then take that story and make it relevant today. Because even though the problems largely are the same that people are trying to solve, there's so many more innovative ways to go about solving them. And our technology in both of these companies had evolved quite significantly through the years. And so I needed to tell that story based on today's problems that customers were trying to solve for, and make sure that I never lost sight of the reason for why we were founded, because that's really sort of the cultural aspects and the secret sauce of our company that people really buy into today. It's like they're buying with their sort of feelings and their emotions, but they're also buying for the tangible benefits that you can help them with as well.
Totally. And I want to get into the meat of the podcast. I want to ask about Delta. I have so many questions, but my last question for you about your career before Delta is just, what are you most proud of? You worked for all these amazing companies, but if you were to say one singular moment at these prior to Delta, what would that be?
I would say at SAP, here's a legacy technology brand, been around for 50 years, big infrastructure technology. And during my time, right before I joined, the company was losing a lot of brand value. And I think a lot of that is because we sort of lost our way in terms of telling our story of relevance. And so when I came in, I really focused on that. And during my tenure, I was able to grow the brand value quite significantly, to the point where it was the only B2B brand in the top 20 of most valuable brands in the world that was achieving 4 consecutive years of sustained brand growth during my tenure. And so I was really happy about that. And so that was SAP growing its brand value. At American Express, I was at American Express during a period where digital was just a department. And so things like social media were just starting to be recognized as something that you might need to pay attention to. Whereas you fast forward today, I mean, digital's embedded in absolutely everything we do. And so during my time at American Express, I stood up the first social media network for the company. From a technology and tools perspective, I introduced the first marketing automation system within American Express. And so I was proud of how much I was able to embed technology into the way we operate, but also embrace newer forms of communication like social media to be able to drive a new level of engagement with our customers.
Totally. And that's something to be so proud of. And I appreciate you sharing all of those. You end up going to Delta in June of 2023, right? People are getting back on planes after COVID. When a new CMO comes on, right, there's a reason for a new CMO coming on. There's some marketing problem that you're looking to solve. What was that at Delta that you were trying to, fix and improve upon?
So this is a very different focus than what my previous few roles were. Delta, great story, loved brands. I wasn't coming in to necessarily fix anything. It was more about how do you just continue to build the love for the Delta brand? The thing that I feel very fortunate about, Delta, number one airline in its category, number one by way of just operational stability, number one in terms of revenue. And so it may seem great, but it's also like, okay, so now what am I supposed to do? If all things are great, what can be your focus and where are you going to put your fingerprints? One of the things that I've learned, and I spend an incredible amount of time studying consumers and their behaviors, is I've recognized that more and more, be it the newer generations that are coming in, or even millennials and Gen X that still make up our highest value flyers, they want something different out of brands that they interact with today. And this is not just a airline category focus, it's across any category. People want to invest more in experiences than they want to invest in products. And they are investing more in brands that are delivering them a very personalized experience. They want brands who know them, and they want customer service to be delivered consistently every single time. And because today there's just infinite choice, no matter what category you operate in. So if a brand messes up, consumers will say, okay, but I'm going to go to the next brand because there's so many choices and I don't have time for you to repair your customer experience with me. And so what I am focused on is how do we start to expand the value proposition in the category in which Delta operates into being much more of this lifestyle brand? So we invest beautifully in the category in which we operate. But if we can think about where are there other Delta touch points that we can establish that sit along or around the travel journey. So for example, how can we bring a lounge experience outside of the airports into places of interest? So earlier this year, we brought a lounge experience to South by Southwest, and it was the first time that we've done that at scale. We brought this lounge 5 consecutive days to Austin, and for 5 consecutive days, we had lines to get into the Delta Lounge experience wrapped around the building every single day. And so we start to recognize that if we can deliver the same service experience, the same care and attention that we're known for as a brand into these points of interest around the travel experience, then we start to appeal more emotionally to
What has
our
the
customer.
feedback been on those?
Pretty awesome. We opened up a retail experience in JFK just before the holidays. We couldn't keep product on the shelves. We were set to be open for 2 weeks. We sold out of all of our products in this for 72 hours. So people want to buy things from Delta. And this wasn't just like a branded hoodie. These were products that we had curated from local artisans in destinations that we travel to all around the world. And we curated experiential packages from a lot of our sponsor partners. So we have a great partnership with Madison Square Garden. They did a pregame shoot around with Jalen Brunson and the New York Knicks. And then after courtside seats, and then after the game, we offered a coveted dinner reservation at Carbone. We packaged this up, and it was one of the first things that sold out of the store. And so that was the interesting thing that we recognized is we had experiential packages and we had product. And even though all products sold, the experiential packages are what went first. And so we're seeing just this incredible amount of engagement around Delta outside of where you typically experience it, which is on board.
Yeah, and it's amazing you guys are doing that because I know a lot of, premier brands are number one in their space. They might not be looking behind them and keep running. They're like, all we got to do is keep the same. But it's amazing that you guys are innovating while still making sure that people trust the brand.
And that's important because our getting our passengers from point A to B with a clean plane, safe food, on time with bags, we have to make sure that is perfected every single time. And so it is our number one priority as a brand. Our ability to do that gives us the permission to expand into some of these category adjacencies so that we can attract more share of wallet with our customers. And so it's, we have a beautiful co-brand relationship with American Express that occupies space in our customers' wallets. But there's also these other sort of buying categories. And so we're leaning significantly into partnerships as well. So we have a beautiful partnership with Starbucks, which definitely occupies space no matter what demographic of our customer base you sit in. We've got a lot of Starbucks customers. So our ability to link your frequent flyer Sky Miles membership with us together with Starbucks's loyalty program and to be able to use your flight points to pay for things within Starbucks, it's been huge for us. And it's a loved brand that the majority of our customers are also appreciating. And so they want just continued access to other partners.
How do you go about, right? I feel like Delta has such a strong brand, and I'll get into that after this, but you got to have a lot of partners, the people and brands that want to align with you, right? So how do you go about checking out and making sure that you're making the right decision and opening the right doors?
Such a great question because, we got a lot of emails of companies that do want to partner with us. Everything is based on customer feedback. So we pulse our customers all the time. Not only do we pulse for feedback after they've taken a flight with us, but we pulse for feedback on a variety of things all the time. And one area that we focus on with them is, what are brands that you love as much as you love Delta? And we take that data and we slice it by lots of different categories. We slice it by demographic. And one of the things that we found is the brands that Gen Z love is not necessarily the same brands that the baby boomer generation loves. And so that's an important distinction for us. Another distinction is gender. Brands men love are not necessarily the same brands women love. And so then we look to curate sort of a value proposition around these sub-audiences and position brands against them so that, to my earlier point on customers wanting to make sure more and more that brands know them and are speaking to them, how we build sort of our partnership strategy by audience is really significant.
Yeah, I really appreciate that look within inside the hood because I've always wondered how, big brands and brands that just have such, leverage, I would say, right, in that matter, can associate and figure out which brands to align with. This is just an anecdote that I thought of, but my dad always says it, and I think it really talks about how amazing the Delta brand is. Like whenever I'm at the airport and I fly maybe a airline that's not Delta and I'm stuck, he's like, David, just spend the extra money and go for Delta. And he doesn't say like the other brands that, are still very good airlines, but that associated with in his head is, it gets you there on time, it's safe, and you're not really going to complain. How do you drill home that message, right, when you already have that lead on the competitors?
It's a great point, and I hear it often that people, even if Delta doesn't have the most robust schedule in a particular city, people will fly to a city just so that they have the ability to fly on Delta. Look, it's the most awarded, most on-time airline on the planet. And, this notion of arriving on time, this essence of time is like priority number one that every human on earth is after. It's like, how do I become so much more efficient with my time? And how do I make sure that I'm always on time for what it is I need to do? So we lean into time a lot in our message, being the most awarded. We sort of lean on those awards, industry awards that we get time and time again, that we promote quite often. The other thing is just the quality of the service. So Delta's the most premium airline. In fact, now the majority of all of our revenues are in our premium cabins. And the way that we define premium is not just from a cabin perspective, Comfort Plus or First Class or Delta One, but it's also about the premium nature of our service. One of the things we hear time and time again is the quality of our people, the manner in which they interact with our customers is absolutely at the top of our game. And then just the entirety of the in-flight service, from the onboard entertainment to the culinary selections that we have. So those are all things that we recognize from our customers are important to them. And that forms the basis of how we tell the story of Delta.
Yeah, it's so interesting that every little thing is thought about, right? I know it is, right? Because I'm a marketer, but for people listening, that everything, including the menu, right, is just everything is down to a T. Going back to experiential, you spoke a lot about creating experiences and great experiences for Gen Z, millennials, boomers, right? How do you do that at a scale, though, right? Because you're talking about doing a little pop-up, right? And that's great, and those people and the content will revolve around it. But what's the best way to do that at scale? And I think it's something that marketers are talking about now, right?
Big time. And I will tell you, especially when you get into the business of experiential, the number one question you have to ask is, how do you scale it? Because building out an experience is not inexpensive. And to your point, aren't you only just attracting the people that have the ability to attach themselves to the experience? So it's a question that we ponder often, but I'll tell you a couple of things. It's about creating multiple experiences instead of just leaning into one. We lean in a lot with the partnerships that we already have, be it, the sports sponsor partners that we have to the partnerships that are associated with our loyalty program. And we'll say to them, and we've openly had these discussions over the past year in particular, and have said, based on the assets that we get as part of our partnership, can we start to lean more into kind of experiential access types of things? Every one of them wants to. And so when you have a variety of partners, then you get more volume of experiences to be able to offer to your customers. And so that's what we do. We lean into many, not just few, because we're after the scale game, because scale matters. We want to make sure that we're offering as many experiences to as many customers as possible. And so being able to take advantage of the volume of partners that we have that have a willingness and are thinking the same way we do, which is why it's important to choose partners that share your values and share your thoughts about the consumer. And we do, and we're very thankful for that. Then you have the ability to offer more.
Totally. That makes perfect sense. And that was so well answered because it's something that I think about a lot, because experiential is great, but it is tough. There's one marketing quote that I really like, and I'm blanking on the name. But he says, if you market to everybody, you market to nobody. We had somebody on from Breeze Airways before, and I posed the same question to them because everybody flies, right? Like, you have such a large consumer base, whereas somebody who drinks seltzer, you might be, for example, Waterloo, right? They didn't pay, but let's just talk about them for a sec, right? It's somebody who's, maybe in their 20s, 30s, right? Delta, everybody flies. So how do you market to your consumers when they're, have so many different interests?
So this is probably in the just over 12 months that I've been in the role. When I think about where did I lean in significantly in my first 4 months in role, and it was really into our strategy, our campaign planning, and our analytics team. And the reason why I leaned into that portion of my marketing team more so than any other team is because this notion of spray and pray, which is, a typical execution method, which is like very mass marketing, where you just take a singular message and you spray it to your entire population and you pray that they're going to attach themselves to whatever offer or product that you're trying to promote to them. Well, typically that model converts at a very, very low rate. And as marketers, we're also struggling for dollars and struggling for people. Dollars are going down. The amount of resources are going down. So it's, how are you as effective as you possibly can be with the dollars that you have?
True.
And so the focus really needs to be on better targeting and better segmenting your audiences that you have. And so we spend an extraordinary amount of time as a marketing team really looking deeply at our customer base and recognizing sort of where the commonalities exist across audiences. And the reality is when you start to create these sub audiences within your overall population, you do start to see commonalities. If you were to think about some, segmented groups, men versus women, there's a lot of commonalities that exist with women and women. A lot of differences between men and women. There's a lot of differences from a demographic perspective if you look at Gen Z versus Boomers, and there's also, from a racial and a cultural standpoint, there's a lot of differences if we think about Black women versus Latinx women, and so we spend a lot of time segmenting our audience base so that we are extracting things from our value proposition that resonate with a particular audience, and we build highly targeted offers and messages that speak to that audience. And so, you're needing to get much more surgical with your data, much more surgical, and you need to invest more into your programs and your offerings. But the payout is so much greater because when you do that, your campaigns and your offers are converting at a much higher rate.
Totally. If you were to go back and give yourself one piece of advice, right? I want to change into like the life advice, personal life stuff, and then start wrapping up. But what would that be? What age would you go back to give you or job, and what advice would it be?
My early 20s when I was, fresh out of school and thinking about where I was going to first land from a career perspective. I would say, to never lose your energy. I think the world that we live in and the life that we lead, it definitely has its ups and downs. Students who are about to graduate from school and they're like, what advice do you have as I embark on my career search? And, I always say, number one, bring energy and passion, because I do think we let the world get the best of us. And so when we show up to a job interview, it can often show. And so my whole life, I've always been, a glass half full than a glass half empty person. I'm driven by optimism. I'm, inspired by what's possible. And so I will tell you, I had always had that belief as I was growing up. And I will tell you, I kind of stuck to my own character. And I think it's really helped. People are drawn to people with energy.
Sure.
They're drawn to optimistic people. They're drawn to people who have, visions that are motivational and inspirational. And I would just say, I feel like any student coming out of school or anybody who's about to come out into the workforce, they're excited. They're energetic. And my advice to them is always, look, it's a tough world. People are absolutely going to try to take your energy out of you. Never let them, because it's the greatest gift that you have. And the more we can preserve the energy that we bring into the workforce at an early age and carry it through to 60, 70, 80 years old.
You're living it. I feel it. I feel the energy.
It's awesome. I mean, I'm just inspired by everybody that's just around me. I feel like everybody's creative.
Yep.
You just have to spend the time with them to be able to unlock it. And when you can unlock creativity and potential in people, it's just amazing what you're able to accomplish together.
Absolutely. One last question before we hit the quick question round. What's one thing that you're super proud of professionally, but also one thing that you're super proud of in your personal life?
I would say they kind of both go hand in hand. I mean, I'm proud that I've been able to have, a pretty successful career while managing a family. So I have two kids. My daughter is a sophomore in high school, Riley, and William is in 8th grade. My husband's in a startup. So like him being in startup life, which of course is 24/7, and me being in a big corporate role and trying to, be there for the moments that matter with our kids. Like the fact that we've been able to be balanced. I won't say that there's necessarily a formula for it. I think it's a mindset.
Yeah.
And, you have to be okay with things not being perfect.
Sure.
And if you can adopt that mindset, it's amazing how much does then fall in place a bit better for you.
And figuring out what works for you, right?
Figuring out what works for you, because everybody's different.
Sure.
But I will say, I've always kind of growing up, I was always the sort of most organized person kind of in my family and my friend group. When I had kids, that kind of had to be okay with that all flying out the window.
Sure.
And it took me a little bit to realize, like, okay, this household's not going to be perfect.
Totally.
And that's okay. And that's what's going to make it special. And once I embraced that, and I embraced that pretty early on as a mom, because I kind of wanted to have both. I wanted to be a mom, and I wanted to also be a professional.
Mm-hmm.
And in order for me to do that, I realized that it's not always going to sort of be a perfect balance. It is going to be a juggle. And
sometimes you're going to hit some turbulence.
And sometimes balls are going to fall and they're going to crash on the ground. And, it's less about that happening and more about kind of what you do to pick them back up.
Sure.
And, I feel pretty happy. I mean, I've got 2 amazingly healthy kids.
Amazing.
They're teenagers, so I'm kind of in that stage, which is, a little crazy.
Yeah.
But it's, I'm the most proud of my ability to sort of just make that juggle real.
Amazing. Well, I think that's great advice and a great place to start wrapping up. And congrats on all the success and continued success with Delta and your family and everything.
Thank you. It's great to be with you today.
Yeah. We could open up one of these.
Yes.
See what we got. Big shout out to OpenFortune.
This is so fun. And it's super creative, I have to say.
All right. Mine says, you may not be the main course, but you're definitely a tasty side dish. That's tough. Dr. Squad.
I'm really happy I didn't get that one. Life is an open road. Where will your next drive take you?
Okay, that's a better one.
Oh, the other side. Cars.com.
There you go.
Where are you next? Very cool.
Amazing.
I like this.
All right. Appreciate OpenFortune for making today's episode possible. All right. Person you most want to sit down to dinner with, dead or alive?
My father, who passed away when I was younger because he never got to see my life. So I'd love to,
That's a good one.
celebrate it with him.
That's a good one. I would say if I was to answer that, I'd say my mom too. So it's the same vibes. Favorite city in the world?
Sydney, Australia.
Is it okay to sleep with socks on?
If your feet are cold, of course.
Favorite rom-com?
How to Lose a Guy in 10 Days.
Yes, so good. Best spot to eat in Atlanta?
The Chastain.
40 years from now, what will people be nostalgic for?
The happiness they felt when they flying on an airplane.
Top 3 brands right now that you think are just doing a great job?
Delta, number 1.
Obviously.
Aloe Yoga. I think they're giving Lululemon a significant run for their money, but a beautiful product. I would say Sephora continues to do amazing things, appealing to nearly almost every demographic.
One thing people don't understand about marketing for an airline is
that marketing is embedded into every facet of what the company is trying to achieve.
What's the worst advice you've ever been given?
Stop being so energetic.
In one sentence, how would you sum up the internet?
Too much information.
Who's somebody you think should hop on this podcast?
Elizabeth Rutledge, CMO of American Express.
Sweet. We're going to have to get
Great
her.
friend, great human, and the brand is my alma mater, so I
you got ties.
love American Express.
Last question for you. In 10 years, where can we catch you, Alicia?
I believe that I will still be at Delta.
And what will you be doing in life?
Probably chasing my kids around the globe somewhere. We're trying to figure out what they're doing, staying out of trouble, but keeping them close.
Amazing. Well, thank you so much for joining us.
Thank you. This was a ton of fun.
Yeah, nailed it.
Thank you.